right, welcome to our morning panel. This panel is about people and companies in your state who are doing things with drones. And we've heard a lot about drones in the media lately, probably second only to all the hype about autonomous vehicles. What's interesting about our panel is traditionally when you think about drones, you think about drones that fly in the air. We also have a company that is actually making underwater drones. So guys, could you take a second to introduce yourselves?
Sure thing. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tom Brady. I'm with SkySpecs. We're located here in Ann Arbor. We're an automated inspection company. So we use drones to basically assess critical infrastructure like wind turbines or bridges or power transmission lines, whatever it may be. We do all of this in an automated fashion.
All right, wait a minute. You're Tom Brady, and you
Yep.
went to the University of Michigan?
That's right. And I hear they found my jersey across the border not too long ago or something like that.
All right, now Tom, everybody else has something in front of them. Where are your drones at today?
My drones are in Iowa. So my company has been around for 5 years now, and we are just now sort of starting to turn that point where we go from research and development to a real commercial product. This week we'll be doing on the order of 150 inspections in the middle of nowhere in Iowa. And these inspections take about 30 minutes to do. So we've got 2 teams out there, and we're also training some contracted operators as well.
So what you're saying is your drones are at work right now.
Our drones are at work. Yep, that's right. And they aren't paid very well.
All right, next.
I'm Matt Guerra. I'm one of the founders at Fathom. Basically, we like to think of ourselves as the future of underwater exploration. What we've done is created an affordable, easy-to-use underwater drone. So as long as you know how to work a smartphone, you can dive underwater without getting wet. And we're based in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
So, Matt, what gave you the original idea? Why did you want to see stuff underwater?
Yeah, so one of my good friends at Hope College, where I graduated about a year ago from, Danny Vessels, he came to me and one other guy, John Boss, and said, hey, I was at my family's cabin in northern Michigan, and there's all these myths and legends about horse-drawn carriages being sunk in at the bottom of the lake, but no one actually knows if they're actually there. So he wanted to actually find out, and what he found out is that he actually couldn't do it at the moment. He, wasn't scuba certified, and everything that he searched for in terms of robotics, there was nothing that he could potentially use. One, it was really technically hard to do. You needed a really, really strong engineering background, and then 2, he didn't have $1,000 to go spend. So Danny came to us and said, we need to make something that allows anyone that can do it. Yeah.
Now, you've had some success selling a product, right?
Yeah, so we launched in the fall on Kickstarter, raised about $200,000 since then. Yep.
And when are you due to ship your product to your backers?
That'll be this summer in June.
Yep. All right, next.
My name is Harry Arnold. I'm a founder of a company called Detroit Drone. We do commercial drone piloting and development. I also do some racing. We run a chapter in MultiGP, which is a national organization, multi-copter racing organization, and we have the Detroit Drone chapter of that. So we're involved in racing and commercial aerial photography.
Harry, when you do your racing, where do you actually race?
Anywhere that we can go without being chased off. But when we try to be nice, we have a couple of over the years, there's certain fields that have been flying fields for RC aircraft, and we have a couple of locations that we bicycle around. We're going to be at Henry Ford Museum during the Maker Faire doing racing on their front yard. And then a month later in August, there's going to be a regional final for a multi-GP national championship. It's going to be there August 26th. So we go wherever we can.
Now, lest you underestimate the potential of drone racing, you know, we've seen that actually video games are being covered by ESPN and the major networks. ESPN has just recently negotiated rights to actually film and broadcast drone racing. So this is a very interesting up-and-coming sport, and we're going to talk about it more. It's just one of the different aspects that you can get involved with drones moving forward. So one of the things we talk about in this panel is there's a lot of different ways for students to move forward you can work for big companies, you can start your own company, you can go to college, you can go to community college, you can just start tinkering. So, Tom, how did you get started? Tell us your origin story, how you ended up where you are.
Sure thing. So I was a student at the University of Michigan, along with our other co-founders, the other co-founders of SkySpecs. There we started a student team called Michigan Autonomous Aerial Vehicles, which is still around, still a functioning student group, which is pretty cool to sort of have that kind of legacy. The goal of the group was to create a drone, basically handheld size, just a little bit bigger than this one here on Harry's desk, that could automatically enter a building through a window, explore it, and then pick up a flash drive off of a desk within the office and exit the building. All of this while avoiding lasers and cameras and reading Arabic signs and all sorts of crazy stuff like that. So we won that competition in 2012. We didn't complete the mission, but we got the most points. 2013, there was the first team to actually complete the mission. When we graduated in 2012, we kind of said, hey, we've developed a lot of really cool technology and we've learned a ton about how to build autonomous robots. Somebody in the world probably wants this, right? So we built a company, we started SkySpecs. We weren't doing wind turbine inspections at the very start. In fact, we were looking at more transportation-related infrastructure, like bridges. And we may get back to bridges someday, but for right now, we are just doing automated wind turbine inspections in the middle of nowhere all across the country and the globe.
Now, you guys recently went across the ocean. Could you talk about that briefly?
Yeah. So I don't know how much is known about the wind turbine industry, sort of like how it's developed globally. We're actually pretty young here in the United States in terms of our wind sector. In Europe, it's much more developed, and for that reason, there's also a lot more investment in research and development, specifically in the wind industry and operations and maintenance of wind assets there in Europe. So Danny and I, not too long ago, were over in Denmark with one of our partners. We were doing inspections out in the middle of the North Sea. It made me terribly seasick. There's a good reason that people that do that kind of work do it all the time, because you really need some practice before you get accustomed to it. But yeah, so we were doing automated wind turbine inspections, big offshore wind turbines in the middle of the North Sea, just a little bit earlier this year.
So basically, you're taking the technology and the knowledge that you developed here, and you're working internationally, and you're working nationally with things you created right here in Michigan.
That's exactly right, and got to make sure we don't scare the people in the intellectual property department at the University of Michigan. We're clean.
All right, Matt, how did you get started?
Yeah, so I started at Hope College. My freshman year, I kind of walked in thinking, oh my goodness, I want to be a PhD in chemistry, and because Hope College is a really strong chemistry program, and I went in there thinking I'm going to go to one of the top 10 chemistry programs for my PhD and do all these great things, just like all these other Hope College alumni. And then I ran into the entrepreneurship program, which was like brand spanking new at Hope College. And all of a sudden I was looped in, and all my time that I was spending on research went to entrepreneurship, and that's kind of when I knew entrepreneurship was kind of a calling for me. So kept walking down there, and then junior year, sophomore year started another company making mason jar speakers, which was kind of interesting. And then junior year ran into Danny Vessels and John Boss, and all of a sudden we were making drones and swimming them around, not flying them around. And we went to pitch competitions all across the state the last couple of years for student competitions, and then we launched in the fall. So yeah.
And then how similar is that drone in front of you to the Kickstarter product that people will be delivering?
So this is relatively similar. If you look us up, there's about 3 different models you'll see online at the moment. So the first one, if you search like Fathom Drone, and you go to image search, there's one that looks like a blimp. And we spent an entire year basically building a product that would never work. So we scrapped that. The Kickstarter one looks relatively similar to this one. And then this one is it's pretty much pre-production unit. Since we're finalizing designs as we speak. The team's actually in Grand Rapids, Michigan, working on it. So a little more sleeker design, I think, than we've started with, which is exciting. And now it actually feels like a product, not just a prototype.
Harry, how did you get started in drones?
Well, I've been doing RC forever, and drones came out about probably 7 or 8 years ago. There was a big explosion in drone use, and a lot of it had to do with the development of more powerful chipsets that could handle gyroscope, accelerometer input in a real timely way to make drones stable. They had drones 100 years ago, but you had to control the motor speeds individually, and you'd spend all your life trying to fly 1 foot off the ground and then crashing back to the ground. But in a period about 8 years ago, 18 years ago, with small processors like ST32 and things like that, turned into what they call flight controllers. It kind of caused a boom, and I was interested. My background is in photography and videography, and I just said, well, hey, this is reliable now. Let's put a camera on it, and it was just kind of a different tripod, and it was a boom to business, and just kept doing it, and now it's kind of, I guess, a trend.
Could you talk a little bit about the unit in front of you?
Okay, this is a racing drone designed by Andy Shin from New York in SolidWorks, but it'll go 70 miles an hour. Basically, it's 3D printed TPU, soft flexibles. Looks like 3-4 millimeter carbon fiber plate, and then the electronics and a battery strapped on top. So it's real efficient engineering, purpose-driven engineering, and I really enjoyed the last presentation about about inertia, and because it's interesting the way that these things maneuver, because they have 4 props. They spin in one's counterclockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise, and they turn by varying the speed of one or more of the motors to create torque in the opposite direction, kind of like the mouse. And it's all done in software in the wonderful 32-bit chip set that I was talking about earlier. And so it has a lot of commonality with the hopping mouse I just saw. And it was kind of interesting because it also, everything it does is, besides just going up, is directly related to its changing inertia. And the better performing drones when it comes to racing have a lower moment of inertia. That was a word that was just mentioned, and less entropy was also mentioned. So I guess there is a commonality to a lot of the topics, whether it's underwater or on a racetrack, with design. And I guess that the challenge of coming close to Mother Nature is like every budding engineer's dream. So that's kind of how I got into it, an interest, and very rewarding as far as, well, not necessarily, I don't have budgets like these guys, but it's rewarding in the fact that it's a lot of fun, and it's something you can do that's fun, and couldn't resist it.
So, Harry, if somebody wanted to get started with a simple racing drone, what kind of investment are people looking at if they wanted just to start playing around?
Well, there's a number of different kinds of investments. You can make a cash investment to Amazon, and 2 days later by drone, or some other, by either a drone or delivery truck, you'll get a drone in the mail that'll fly. And maybe a couple of $100 for a drone, $100 for batteries and a charger, a couple $100 for goggles. So it's starting out in drone racing might be $500-600. I would be remiss if I did not mention to all the smart young people out there, there's another way to do it, which is like sadly getting less common, but you can kind of do it a la carte. You can purchase a frame, you can purchase different components based on their specs, order it, solder the different components and put them together and have a drone. So you can invest money and get it a quick delivery, or you can invest time and get something together in a couple weeks. but for about the same money actually. And that's the part I can't understand nowadays. You buy something built and it's the same as if you buy the parts. There's like no inducement. But if you just, if you discipline yourself to understand what you enjoy, then, you can build your own.
All right, next question for the panel. So, Tom, if you could go back to yourself when you were in college or starting out, what would you say? How would you better prepare to be successful at what you're at now? And what would you recommend to the students if they're interested in starting a company or getting involved with drones?
Yeah, I guess SkySpecs at various stages throughout its life has been somewhat of a, not necessarily a Shakespearean tragedy, because we're still here, but there's certainly been some years, I say, that we probably could have spent a lot better. And I think if I could go all the way back to, say, 2012, when the company was starting, and actually just reminding everyone about what I said previously, we were doing this whole student project, right? We were part of a student project from 2009 to 2012. And we were doing everything we were building everything. So we were building flight controllers, we were designing circuit boards, we were developing an airframe, we had carbon fiber molds, we were writing all of the autonomous navigation software, we were developing our own sensor. Like, we were developing a sensor for observing the world, and like, that is crazy. You could make an entire company out of every single one of those things, right? Like, they're all really hard. So I think if I could go all the way back to 2012, I would say focus. Figure out what the actual problem that you're trying to solve is, because your customers don't care who or how or what technology you're using under the hood. They care about getting the job done. And for SkySpecs, that meant go collect a bunch of autonomous inspection. Go collect a bunch of pictures. Doesn't matter if it's automated. Doesn't matter if if the propellers are custom carbon fiber propellers. It doesn't matter if any of that. So now what we do is we buy anything we can off the shelf, and we focus on what we're really, really good at. And I think that's a really important message for anyone starting a company that, I'm going to use some really cliche terminology here. Know your minimum viable product. You'll hear that a ton if you become an entrepreneur and you become part of these startup communities. Know your MVP. And it took us, I would say, a solid 3 years before we really understood what our MVP was. And I think now we're pretty much there.
Now, when you guys began, like you said, you were doing everything. How did you make the change in your marketing from, hey, we're a drone company, to, hey, we have a solution for a problem you have?
That's a really good question. That's another important thing, is understanding who your customer is and what they care about. Of course, me being a technologist myself and our entire team being full of technologists, we like to tout things like, hey, guess what? Our drones use lasers, and they use like RTK GPS and all of this really cool stuff, and customers just don't care. They don't care about any of that. So we used to go to conferences and we would talk about being a drone company, this, that, and the other thing. And in the wind industry specifically, they were turned off over the last several years by drone solutions just not working. So a lot of the companies that are in our sector, they tried using drones. They would hire professional drone operators and things like that, and the output wasn't there. The whole product, the whole solution for the product wasn't there. So a lot of them were turned off. But once we started saying we're not a drone company, and we started saying we're an automated inspection company, then their ears perked up, because they're like, oh, if I could do 20 times as many inspections in a day, I could do repairs much sooner and all these other things. And they stopped thinking about the means by which we were delivering the solution, and more about the solution itself. So,
Matt, how would you go back and change to prepare better for where you're at right now?
Yeah, so I completely agree with what Tom just said. I think we have a really engineering-focused team too, so it was really intriguing for us to keep building product, and we actually spent, instead of 3 years, we spent a whole year on the wrong thing. I think the one thing that I've learned, especially the last 2 years, is that surrounding yourself with the right people and really talented people is like number one thing. So that's advisors, that's like the people that are part of your company, just even your own friend groups. I mean, all across the board is the more better people and the more quality people you can have around yourself was the key thing in making sure, because connections too are huge, just so you can have those networks and the connections and resources, since resources for a startup are so low. So,
Harry, how would you go back to prepare to be a better racer or to be better at putting drones together? What would you recommend to the students here?
Well, first of all, I listened to my mother and father. Everything they told me, I would have done exactly the way that they asked. And I also would have got straight A's in school. I wouldn't have watched so much TV. I guess, taking your question and like going farther with it, I guess my advice would be to find something that you like. Science and technology is so broad. I mean, the first thing, when I do STEM, the first thing I do is define science as a study of how things work, and that's pretty much infinite. And within that, find something that interests you and just go with it. The biggest blessing in life is to be involved in a career where you have some kind of love or passion for it, because then it's not work, then it's just an interesting life. And there's no bigger blessing than that, besides health. But, so I guess my mistakes were always kind of out of curiosity. And so, as long as I just touch the hot stove once, that's just the cost of learning. But yeah, don't be afraid to learn. Find a teacher that makes it seem magical to you, and drain them of all their knowledge, and move on to do what you want to do, because there's going to be, for the rest of all your young lives, there will be innovation and new products, and it might as well be you, the one that's coming up with them, because it's somebody somewhere sitting in a chair just like you, so it might as well be you.
Tom, as you guys move forward, what kind of employees, what kind of talents are you looking for? Like if somebody wanted to join the SkySpecs team as you guys get larger, what kind of different energies and technologies and skills are you looking for?
Yeah, so we have a somewhat different way of thinking about this. Well, when you compare it to typical companies, we think first about getting the right people on the bus or getting the right people on the rocket ship, and then finding out where they sit, so that kind of thing. So I wouldn't go out and say, hey, Phil, we're looking for, in most cases I wouldn't say, hey, Phil, we're looking for a software engineer to do A, B, C, and D. Typically we kind of just come across great people that are really motivated, because a good engineer can pretty much learn how to do anything. You don't need to know how to write C++ to be a pretty freaking good roboticist over the course of the next 6 months at SkySpecs. So that's one thing. In terms of skill sets, though, that I think that we find really valuable, software, and robotics. So I have an aerospace engineering background, and I spent a little bit of time in school doing software-related stuff. I wish I had spent a lot more. So I guess I can't stress enough, even if you're in a more physical science or something like that, it is so important to be able to speak the language of programmers, because it's eating the world.
Mm-hmm. Matt, as Fathom grows, what kind of talent would you like to see the students to develop? What kind of people would you like to choose from to grow your team as you grow?
Yeah, so Tom kind of nailed it on the head again here for me. So, I think a lot of it is, do you fit with our team? Is it great? Are you passionate about a lot of it's actually passionate about environment, actually. Our team's pretty passionate about that and outdoors and being enthusiasts for the outdoors, I guess. So that's a lot of it, and just being, do you fit with us, and do you just kind of fit? And the skills are really important. I guess you can't put a marketer into a software, but yeah, I think for us, software is actually becoming a bigger thing than I originally didn't think it would be. And some hardware development, some engineering a little bit here and there, but for having a software engineer yelling at me the past couple of weeks saying he needs more help, I'm going to go with software. So there's that.
Harry, what kind of talents would these students need to be good racers, to have fun and be able to build their own drones and and compete and add to the technology in that way?
They would just need to have, I guess the only prerequisite would be an attention span long enough to go through the learning curve, which sometimes can be intense. You're not going to just decide to be a great racer or a great pilot and then be one. So you have to have the talent to perfect it. People ask me, is it hard? And to fly a drone or race a drone, and I say it's just like asking, is it hard to play a piano? Well, no, a 2-year-old can go and hit a key on a piano, and it's the same key that Beethoven hit, but it's not the same thing. And so, you can fly a drone, but winning a race or winning a national championship is a different thing. And if you have the ability, and I'm noticing that there is a lot of carryover for hand-eye coordination. So some people are musicians, some people play a lot of video games, but there's a lot of hand-eye coordination involved in flying and racing. So it's kind of a natural gift, because the people that are like dominant racers, they kind of come into it and they're all of a sudden good after like 3 or 4 months. They're like, didn't they just start, and how are they winning? But there's a lot of facets to it besides just being competitive. Within the racing community, we have people that build drones, and they don't even fly them hardly, but they just really enjoy the art of putting them together efficiently and having a good running machine, even if they can't fly it that well. I myself, I don't actually do a lot of the racing, but I do a lot of the race organizing and kind of promote the races. So it's a big tent. There's room for almost anybody, but I would say study, be aware of technologies and how they might impact what you're doing, and have a thirst for research and knowledge where you'll be on the internet looking for new solutions and new ways to do things better, because there always will be one.
All right, final question. For each of your respective fields, what you're working in, what do you see in the next 5 to 10 years? How do you see what you're doing now changing?
So when you look at drones as a whole industry, I think the biggest thing holding back drones is, I'm going to go with the obvious answer here, regulation. So in order to fly drones commercially, there's a whole bunch of limitations in terms of you have to be in line of sight of the drone. Okay, so all of a sudden now you require an operator to be on site for every single deployment with that drone. That's limiting. You can't fly at nighttime without getting clearance to do it. You can't fly near airports. I agree with that one, so I'm not going to argue that. I think regulation is really what's holding back our industry. The technology's there. I am certain that if you were to give SkySpecs 6 to 8 months to develop a system that could automatically take off and do wind turbine inspections without a person there, I'm certain we could deliver that for you. But that's illegal, so we're not doing that. We're not spending our time on that. So I think that's one interesting thing, is regulation. Where I also see a lot of promise for the future is sort of at the intersection of the other mobility technologies. So looking at how do drones play a part in the growth of autonomous vehicles? Is there ways that drones should be helping with traffic monitoring? I don't know. Should drones be taking off from the back of pickup trucks to go do asset management? Maybe. So I'm thinking a lot about those kinds of things where the rest of mobility intersects. So that and regulation.
Yeah, for us it's a little bit different, because we're not in the air drone space, we're the underwater drone space, and we're one of the first movers in the whole industry. I think there's only a handful of underwater drone companies, or ROVs, as remotely operated vehicles as they're called. And so from us, we know there's more competition coming towards us. I feel like every few months there's a new one. So I think we're really excited to kind of see where the space goes. But what we've learned, especially in the past year, is how many applications or how many problems there are for underwater, like inspections, water quality monitoring. There's so many different commercial applications and just problems that we haven't solved underwater yet. that I think we can actually solve with what we have now and with some of the stuff that we can grow into. So I think where we go in the next 5 years is going to be interesting to see what commercial applications we go into and just kind of see where the whole underwater drone industry goes, since I think it's going to be pretty similar to some of the air drone stuff, to how SkySpecs is doing air turbine inspections here. So,
Harry, what changes do you see in drone racing coming up?
Well, I'm not. Drone racing probably isn't. Drone racing is like my hobby. My business is commercial drone use, and so the racing. I'm reactive. So whatever happens, I'm going to do it and enjoy it. But as far as commercial drone use, what I see in that field, I think the sky's the limit. I think drones right now are at a place where the internet was 20 years ago. Like the internet came out and everybody thought it was cool, but you're like, well, I don't really need email. But now the internet is on your washing machine and your dryer and everything. And I think drones are the same way. They're like an amazing, versatile mobility device, and uses are being invented every day for people to do it. And I'm a big advocate of open platforms where clients can call me and we can lift whatever, whether it's an air quality tester, LiDAR, or just a camera. And with that kind of versatility, I think we're posed to accept missions where people actually still need pilots to do some of the things. And I think the future is wide open. So there's going to be drones doing things that we can't imagine in 20 years. And I think anybody's guess is probably valid, but it's going to be up to you guys, the young engineers, to come up with the physical apparatus that are actually going to be making the future happen. So it's wide open. The sky's the limit.
All right, if you have more questions for these guys, later this afternoon, Harry is going to be flying his drone in the demo area from 3 to 3:30. He'll also be at his table if you have more questions. Tom has nothing to fly because it's off working, so.
And I'm also not qualified to operate it.
You
We'd have
fly
to have Harry
mine.
operate it.
So we're going to put him to work and Matt to work at a Q&A session this afternoon. If you have any questions about pretty much anything related to what they talked about or how to get started or what to study, please take an opportunity. I mean, one of the really great things about Robotics Day is you get a chance to not only see technology that people talk about, but you get a chance to interact with experts here in Michigan that are doing really cool, groundbreaking work.